It's Tuesday, October 7th, 2025, and I'm Dave Sobel. Welcome to the Business of Tech Lounge, the live version of the Business of Tech podcast, brought to you today in a special webinar sponsored by Mail Protector. Today's session, Defending Against Modern Email Threats. Email is still the number one way hackers get into organizations, but the threats we're seeing now look nothing like the old spam days. AI impersonation and social engineering are changing the game, and that's what we're here to dig into. I'm here joined today by Cody Elkley and from Mail Protector and Mauro Sritari from CIO Landing, and together we'll explore how the threat landscape has evolved, what defines modern email security, and how MSPs can stay ahead of what's coming next. We've got about 45 minutes of discussion, and then we'll be opening up for questions, but you can put them in through the course of the discussion. Please feel free to put those into the Q&A panel if you're watching live on Zoom as we go. Let's dive in. Cody Elkley is the Director of Technical Support at Mail Protector, recognized by CRN's 100 People You Don't Know But Should in 2025, bringing deep expertise in MSP operations and customer success within email security. Cody, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for the intro. Really glad to be here. Yeah.
Good to have you. And Mauro Sritari is the Director of Operations at CIO Landing, who's leading automation, operations alignment, and AI innovation strategies while bridging technical depth and process excellence. Mauro, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dave. Hey, Cody. Thank you for having me here.
I've got some big heavy hitters here. So let's just start with the core bit. Cody, I'm going to throw it to you here. What does modern email threat really mean compared to 5 years ago?
Definitely. So, yeah, I mean, 5 years ago, even, we were mainly dealing with volume issues, some cute stuff that people would do with changing names or maybe, server locations being different. People barely knew how to VPN like back then. So now we're dealing with more modern threats. I can spin up a server in 10 minutes in a new country, and just send stuff from there. It's not just spam anymore. It's directed attacks.
Gotcha. Now, Mauro, talk to me a little bit about what you're seeing like right now in the field in your MSP.
Yeah, pretty much what Cody said. We're seeing that, these days AI is thriving even for threat actors. So it's not as much as volume that we see, but, focused target attacks to specific CIO or C-suite executives directly and abusing a lot of legitimate services, Dropbox, SharePoint, all kind of legitimate services are being abused to deliver what it tends to be phishing or usually phishing to our clients and most of the organizations out there.
Well, I'm going to follow that up with a follow-up. Like, how much are you seeing already in terms of AI phishing or impersonation attacks in practice?
We've seen, I would say, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, an uptick on that. Probably, I would say 5 or 6 cases that we have identified that, our clients were targeted. One of the examples, one of our clients, medium-sized organization, 100 plus users, and they actually craft a very well email to their COO and, to do a phishing attack specifically to this person. It was the only person in the whole organization who got that email. And luckily for us, and again, we have a multiple layer security approach, we were able to identify and block that. But it was something that was definitely targeted to her.
Gotcha. Now, Cody, I know you're looking at it from the Mail Protector perspective, looking at all this volume. What's the balance now you're seeing between technical compromise and social engineering?
Gosh, yeah, I would say a lot of the time technical compromise has been, I don't want to say fully solved, but it's solved a lot of the way where like someone just getting into the business of trying to compromise people maybe can struggle to get in technically. So social engineering is actually almost the easier route now. So we find that people are just sending maybe blank emails, no links, no nothing, and they're just asking how someone's day is just to see who's going to respond and who they can interact with a little bit more.
Gotcha. And I know you're watching the different flows. Are providers starting to see more outbound issues with clients' domains being abused?
We had a chat probably a month ago about compromises where people were using the outbound relays to send out with vulnerable features such as direct send from Microsoft 365. So that's when those outbound features, and even there were some inbound protections you could do, but outbound features and security and things like that improved the amount of emails that were caught so that those actually didn't get out as often to the internet and potentially damage people's business reputation and things like that. So yeah, definitely outbound's even more important now than ever. So
Gotcha. Mario, you're nodding your head. I'm sure you've got something to jump in there, give you a little bit more context.
Yeah, 100%. So one of the, these days, PC business email compromise is, I would say, super common or pretty common. And one of the issues, if you are not protecting the outbound, is reputation damage. So even internal emails, if you can route those through your gateway, make sure you do so. With Mail Protector, one of the things that we like from them is when there is any suspicious of a business email compromise, even legitimate usage, they reach out to us. They say, hey, this user is trying to send this amount of emails. I don't think this is normal. Please review it. And the majority of the time, we get those emails blocked if there is an abuse, or we may say, no, it's fine. Let this user send those emails before they reach the world. So that is preventing, again, reputation damage for the company.
Gotcha. Now, Cody, I want to talk us a little bit into the way this is designed in a modern email structure. So talk to me a little bit about the way a modern email security architecture, like how does that built out and what does it look like?
yeah, so as far as inbound email goes, usually you either have two boats. You have a secure email gateway in front of you sitting on the internet. Email flows through that, and then it hands it off. And the other route that's become much more popular is API. The reason that's become more popular in the last few years is because APIs have been more mature. So like Microsoft, Google, and other companies have developed their APIs more. So it's become easier to develop security products around that because there's hook-ins. So those are typically the two routes people go. As far as outbound goes, everyone still kind of defaults to either outbound email routes or connectors and then utilizing TLS in between different servers and things like that. With API solutions, again, you can actually get things that scan email before it goes out through the connector, which is almost more ideal in a lot of situations because then you're not relying on an email potentially having a man-in-the-middle attack when it's handing off to, a server that's outside of your environment. So
okay, now Cody, I need you to say a little bit more because I feel like there's more to unpack about the difference on kind of legacy approaches versus API wins. Tell me a little bit about like what the email providers have done from an email, API perspective, like where that wins versus some of the legacy approaches.
I'm trying to understand maybe a little better what you mean by the modern approaches.
Well, I mean, if I get in the DeLorean and I go way back, we were doing everything filtering just at the SMTP level, right? And now we have the ability to call you as the vendor provider on this are able to call in and do much more analysis. Tell me a little bit about kind of that core architecture, like how the API call stuff works.
I gotcha. Yeah. So, I mean, our servers are effectively telling Microsoft a lot of the time to send the email to us directly. And there's direct connections and tunnels and things like that way. But also we can have various Microsoft systems scan an outbound email before it goes out. So you can effectively route an email through Microsoft systems to get their opinion, then send it to our system, then send it out. So we can have these multiple layers of how emails go through as well. So there's just several different ways to do it nowadays. And the API layer adds a lot more where we can effectively pull it out, put that email through a bunch of tests, almost a sandbox. It's like one layer before a sandbox environment, get a ton of information about it, and then send it out. We can even look at, for example, normal text patterns for individuals. So like I type a certain specific way, and Dave, you type a completely different way. And there's a normal cadence to how we type, or maybe words we use, or my vocabulary doesn't all of a sudden spike to like doctorate level or anything like that. So there's even checks like that can be done. And that's pretty much exclusively available because of the API, because now we get to view the bodies of those emails a lot of the time. Whereas by the time it gets to SMTP or the secure email gateway, all we can really view is in-transit information is what I call it. So we don't get quite as much detail from that because we don't want to open the email and then break DKIM SPF DMARC by opening the email to view the body. So we can do all that before all that gets added now, as far as the API goes. So
gotcha. I mean, that may put some context in and lets people understand a little bit what I'm talking. So Maura, now that we've gone through that, Maura, like, how do you evaluate a vendor's approach when you're choosing for your stack?
Great question. So first of all, we believe in security as layers. So we have multiple layers, and to support that, we currently have multiple vendors for email security. We, of course, use Mail Protector as one of our vendors. We also use Inky as the vendor that we use. We also have some configurations in Microsoft Defender as well. So again, we believe in this multiple layer approach for security. It has been proven to work for us many, many times. We do our research, and threat actors, they do their research as well. So sometimes an email gets through some cracks from any of the solutions. There is another layer and another, guardrail in there to help us. Going back to the basics, right? SPF, DKIM, DMARC, that still applies today. Okay, even though it's basic, there are a bunch of emails that do not comply with those 30 simple protocols, and you can stop them before reaching the mail server. So when we evaluate vendors, we review how they implement, from basics to how they interact with the APIs, all of that. What are their capabilities? So part of the API's benefits or features is also the remediation portion. So not only the prevention, but also remediation. Some of the APIs allows you to recall emails that for some reason, landed on user's inbox. And that is also something that we consider when we evaluate vendors.
Gotcha. Now, Maura, I'm going to ask a follow-up there because, so you talked a little bit about other pieces. Talk to me a little bit about the integration points that matter most for you as you're looking at this stack. Like, is it the M365 Google portion, the PSA RMM? You've got other, like, talk to me about the integration points that really matter as you're building out your stack.
So we have I don't recall exactly the number, but ton of questions that we ask every vendor when we are demo or evaluating a solution. And in terms of integration, there are different components of that. There is the service portion, alerting portion, meaning the PSA, the support desk team will they get the alerts when something happens. There is the compliance or security portion. Do we have an integration with a change management platform like LineGuard? There is a billing portion. Do we have direct billing integration into our PSA? Do we need to rely on a third-party application like Gradient? There is also the security portion. Do we have an integration with a SIEM, for instance? So there is, I would say, multiple integrations that will look when we are evaluating vendors that definitely, help us to know which one is the right vendor because we know we can rely on those integrations to provide a better service for our clients.
Gotcha. Now, Cody, I want to ask a little bit because a lot of partners are coming into this space not necessarily knowing every little detail, particularly if they're thinking about what kind of latency matters or what kind of reliability or what kind of false positive rates are really important. Like, give me a little bit of a sense of how you think partners should assess those metrics when they're talking to various vendors.
I think as far as like metrics go and things like that, a lot of the vendors and things like that in the space are doing, there's kind of a baseline at this point of security that you have to provide. And almost every vendor is providing some level of baseline. So most of the people are 90% there. So it's really the 10% extra. So when we talk about like false positive rates and things like that, if you went to, Mail Protector or Barracuda or Mimecast or anybody, the false positive rates are effectively negligible a lot of the time. They're pretty low, and then a lot of the time there's ways to adjust those false positive rates within those systems, and that's actually what I think matters a lot. The actual like administrative burden of products is what we talk about at Mail Protector because we've designed our products so that effectively like a technician could sit down, train for a day, and then know how to use all Mail Protector's tools, whereas a lot of other tools on within the stack take weeks or months to even learn the ins and outs of, or there's 3,000 reports you can possibly run. How do you sift through those things? So I would more say usability would be like my number one concern when I'm looking for various tools and things like that, because that gets overlooked a lot. Whereas I think we get lost in the, oh, we can filter better. Oh, we can do this better. We can do this better. We catch phishing. These guys don't. There are products that do things a lot better. But within that category, once you kind of sift out the really bad guys who haven't updated their stuff since 2005, you really get 5 to 10 vendors in the space, and then you really want to look at usability, in my opinion. So I guess false positive rates, at this point, like virus and malware, we have like 1 in a billion is like a false positive. It's like so tiny, but most people are using a lot of the same engines as far as that goes. So we don't really talk about, malware and virus false positive rates anymore. As far as spam and things like that go, it can be, there can be a bit of a learning period where you do have to make adjustments to the tools and things like that, where there are false positive rates. So for example, we might have like a 2 to 3% false positive rate as far as like someone sent something and we thought it was spam, but they're actually just someone in marketing. So, they need that stuff to get through, and then you tune that tool, and the tuning of the tool is the important part from my perspective, I guess. So,
okay, Maura, I feel like there's some pieces for you right there in that explanation. Like, so how do you evaluate usability and the portion of the deployment portion in your MSP? Like, how do you evaluate that?
Well, great question. So one of the reasons why we chose Mail Protector is exactly because of that usability and a single pane of glass for our technicians. And there are a ton of other email security vendors out there, but one of the things that we have with Mail Protector is the granularity to define permissions and define settings from the MSP perspective to the client perspective to the domain perspective to the group of user perspective to the user perspective. So we can filter and tweak this as much as we want and as much as we like. So we as a company have a baseline of security settings. We have been working with Mail Protector for several years, so we pretty much have a very good understanding of how they filter and what they are looking at when they analyze an email. So we have our baseline. Then we customize that per customer, sometimes per domain, and again, sometimes per group of users, departments that are synced with 365, for instance, and sometimes per user. And I can tell you one of the things that we say at CIO with our amount of food, we use Mail Protector. I have my settings customized for me. I do not like a lot of promotions that I get, but some other users at the company love those promotions. So that's exactly the benefit of customizing per user.
As we think about things that kind of trip people up here, you've spent a lot of time working with MSPs and figuring out what the flows are. What are some of those core technical controls that still really trip people up? Is it FPF, SPF? Is it DKIM, GBARC, other stuff? Like, what's the core stuff that really screws people up in email security?
Definitely, yeah. I think the core DNS protocols are big ones. There's a stat we throw out in our webinars. Around 14% of our tickets are around just SPF. And sender framework policy has been around since the early 2000s. So we've had 20 years to get familiar with it and be aware of it in the security space. And, over 10% of people still struggle with it, understanding it when it's used, what they have to evaluate per, when they add a vendor to the space. Do they need to add, signature services to their SPF, things like that, let alone something like DKIM, which is a signature, an individual private signature and a public signature. How long ago was this? 5 years ago, we implemented DKIM filtering at our relay. And by default, we had it quarantine if DKIM failed. And 4 or 5 years ago, we had to shut it off in less than 24 hours because we had the highest support ticket volume in the history of the company that day. So many people had misconfigured DKIM records or DKIM records that were failing when they necessarily shouldn't have because they weren't being signed properly. There were a million different problems we were solving, but the volume of people with those problems was so high, we basically had to back up from our stance on, DKIM should be a security protocol we check for everybody. Today, thankfully, we get to tell everybody to turn that up, but we still have it not quarantine out of the box because many partners who join us have those misconfigured when they start. So that's actually part of the onboarding process, is making sure those are configured correctly within the space, because even technical people don't have their own domains configured properly with those.
So somehow I'm not surprised by that, but more I'm sure you've given some thought to the onboarding process as well. Like, walk me through your process when deploying email security for clients, particularly in that onboarding process they haven't had it before.
Mm-hmm. So I think communication is key. Setting the proper expectations is key. So when we deploy security tools, particularly talking about email security, we sit with the clients, we show them what the email quarantine dishes email they will get will look like. We talk to them, we say, by default, we will set this up every 8 hours. Do you want to change that? Do you want to? And more often than ever, they are used to some sort of quarantine dishes in a way from previous providers. So they say, my users are used to get this every hour. That's fine. So we try to match that and we customize that so they get it every hour. The idea is to get the least point of resistance. So making sure we change the security vendor for them, but not so much the experience. So we customize that for them. We explain to them that the system is learning as well as we are learning. And there is a reason why Mail Protector doesn't allow to mass import whitelist URLs or email addresses. And there is a best practice on why you should not import whitelisting addresses or URLs, okay, between vendors, right? So we explain this to the client and we tell them there might be hiccups, there might be bumps on the road the first week or two. We are learning. When you get this email, click here, release it. We will be letting you know what we see. We see it with them. We say, whatever, 25% of the emails you get are spam. Our average among all our clients is between 10 and 15%. So you are getting more spam than the majority of our clients. Why is that? Are you subscribed to many email lists out there? Well, try to unsubscribe. Is there any particular mail address, mailbox that is getting more spam than others? Then let's figure out why and try to solve that. Maybe adjust the filters for that particular user. So that's what we do. I think communication, one more time, is key to get the users happy and the solution implemented.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. By the way, for those of you watching, if you've got questions, make sure to throw them into the Q&A section. We've got a whole dedicated Q&A section, but I'm keeping an eye out. If we get good ones along the way, I will certainly drop them in. So make sure you've got questions, drop them into the Q&A box. Now, Cody, I know particularly as you look at this from a support side and a vendor side, you've probably got some good stories around configuration mistakes that most often damage protection. Like, give me a little bit of a sense, like, what are the top offenders for those configuration mistakes that really mess up protection?
I would definitely say, I will say actually, going too fast is a lot of the time the problem. People have like a spreadsheet of the 10 things they have to set up, and then they run through that spreadsheet, and then 4 things break along the way, and then it's really difficult to actually troubleshoot what broke what. So even in like our deployment onboarding, we're like, please deploy the inbound filter and then deploy the outbound filter, because you could break inbound and then that ends up breaking outbound somehow because it's misrouting or looping. And there's like a million things that can happen. So I would always say slow down. I think maybe a more of a life lesson than a specific, MSP or IT lesson. But that's a big one. I would say a lot of the time people have extra things that are sending email that they weren't aware of. So stuff could have gotten set up, 5, 10, 15 years ago before an MSP was hired, and someone's cousin set up a printer in the back closet that no one's ever known about. And someone's been using that relay for 10 years to send out bad email. And they're like, why does our domain's reputation, why is it bad? So we've had a ton of situations where devices are set up. Automatic forwarding is just some kind of nightmare to figure out a lot of the time. The list kind of goes on and on. I think Mauro mentioned a really big one. People have too many whitelists. We've had people come over to Mail Protector and ask if they can import 12,000 addresses to their whitelist. And we heavily recommend against that because that's 12,000 people who could get compromised, or 12,000 people who already are compromised. Like, at that point, you're like expanding your attack vector by orders of magnitude. So there's all these little things that even go outside the, oh, I need to set up the product correctly. When people set up Mail Protector, we actually find a ton of problems along the way because we give them visibility into what they weren't seeing before. And we end up shutting off a ton of stuff or fixing mail loops or killing auto forwards or, I don't know, distribution lists no one knew about that are somehow hidden in legacy Exchange are set up and are being used to relay email. There's some crazy stuff that can happen for sure.
So, Moran, how often do you review all this? I mean, you want to be inclined to think email set and forget it, right? We get it all set up. We get our email, we deploy it. How often, like, what's your best practice about reviewing and retuning all of those rules?
Great question. So, going back to change management and change monitoring, we rely on some tools, LionGuard being one of them. So, you want to make sure when anyone changes a DNS record, particularly talking about SPF, DKIM, or DMARC. When we implement DMARC for our clients, we do it in phases, what Cody said, because we know that if overnight we change the DMARC policy to make it, reject every email that doesn't comply with DKIM and or SPF, there will be issues. We know that. So what we do is we deploy the policy kind of listen mode only, and this is the way that we explain to our clients. We'll deploy a tool that will simply monitor. There will be no change on any email flow right now, okay? So we'll be monitoring, and we deploy that tool for 30 to 45 days. Then we pull up a report, and we sit with our client and say, why are you sending emails from HubSpot? And they say, oh, that's my CRM. I forgot to tell you about it. It's fine. It's configured HubSpot properly. Right? What about SendGrid? No, we don't use SendGrid. Well, there is a high volume of emails being sent through SendGrid. And same thing, we have a single product out there. We make sure they are all configured properly. And then we turn on the proper policy for DMARC, which is reject 100% of the time. Now, every now and then, some clients reach out to us saying, oh, so-and-so is trying to send emails from XYZ new platform, and they are not being delivered. And we say, that's fine. And that is the idea of having the proper controls in place. Let's talk with that person. Let's go to the tool XYZ and configure it properly.
Gotcha. Now, I'm going to follow up that more because I want to know a little bit more. Talk to me a little bit about what human stuff, the human behaviors that really you have to push back most. I'm sure you've got a list of things, particularly when you're onboarding something new that you have to lean into on that security training. Like, what are those human behaviors that messes this all up?
I think it all comes back to the people's knowledge about technology and the experiences they had in the past that they think they still apply today. So we had a client where, when we onboarded his company, he came to us and say, I need to at least these 10,000 email addresses. And we said, why? No, because, in my previous experience, I wasn't getting these emails. These emails are important. And our answer is, if those emails are important and those are big companies and they are properly configured, there's no reason why we need to whitelist them. That's a security risk. Right? So once we explained that, we had another request from the same guy and the same company. I want all my emails to be routed between my server, which was Microsoft 365, and your email gateway, which in this case is Mail Protector, using TLS. So I want to force TLS. And we were like, that's fine. We are using TLS. It's part of the configuration. We use it. I want to force it. And we said, we use it. Let's go to our report. So we had to actually pull reports to show this guy that 100% of communications were already using TLS 1.2, actually 1.3, most of them. But up until we sent him and shared with him the reports, he was still under the idea that we weren't using TLS just because he thought that we had to manually, force that back then, which was true back then, right? And more often than ever, when we jump into a new client, you will be surprised, Dave, how many times we found hundreds of exchange rules created 5, 6, 10 years ago that makes no sense whatsoever. So we have found exchange rules to block emails that contain birthday in the subject. Why do you need exchange rules for that? I have no idea.
Well, that's interesting. And by the way, I'm going to highlight, I know the folks at Mail Protector have a 5-part webinar series on email security basics that I want to throw out as something that's available as a resource. And as I talk about that, Cody, like, what are some of those legacy hanging on ideas that you see most as you're managing support? Like, what are the myths people are hanging on to most that sound like holding on to birthday filtering?
Yes, there's a bit people are hanging on to for sure. I think a lot of the time there's friction adding an email filter at all because they believe that Microsoft 365 or Google or whatever platform they're using, even like Gmail, they'll be using like free Gmail. They think that the security is enough as far as what like the core security for the platform is. And sometimes it takes a lot of convincing, or even like we'll hop on meetings with our partners and their customers and, maybe knock out some technical questions on, no, that's not enough. And the reason is because those got sold as like the original email filters, and they are good enough. And to be frank, like those filters are there to protect Microsoft and protect Google. They're not there to actually protect the end user. Like if anyone goes to their Gmail account, they'll see a billion things in the spam folder that are malicious, like bad links, bad everything. And even Microsoft will let things through. I'll say Microsoft is very good at catching like viruses, malware. And pretty much everybody is at this point. But they're really bad at catching spam or really noisy stuff, or, we're going to give you 500 leads tomorrow, because they don't want to stop, I'll call it like marketing communication, because they're marketing. Like, so they have a lot of these companies have an inherent need to get that stuff through. So they're not going to help prevent that stuff and cut down on that noise like other filters are. And all in all, that's probably the biggest myth we have to get rid of, is that your core security is good enough. I'll say the next one is that security has to feel bad. So a lot of the time, again, we're convincing people that it's better to have more security. So like adding SPF, adding DKIM, add DMARC. And even the MSPs we work with are like, how do I explain this to an end user? Like they're not going to understand all these DNS protocols and things like that. And you really have to bring it down to a simple level of, these security things aren't going to add friction to your day-to-day. They're just going to help protect you. So like there's this huge myth around security equals pain. And that's gone away a ton in the modern age because we have so much usability, and programmers have gotten better and software's gotten better and everything. So.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I'm going to pivot a little bit to talk then as we last little bit before we go to the open Q&A. And reminder, viewers, throw those Q&A into the chat box. I want to talk a little bit about kind of collaboration and the future as we look, to where this is all going a little bit. And I'm going to start more. I'm going to start with you here. Like, how do you think it best works when vendors and MSPs are working together? Like, what are the resources you're leaning on for your vendors to stay ahead of new threats, and what is the part of it that's your responsibility?
I think it's a two-way street. They provide information to us. They have an overview, like we have whatever X amount of hundred thousands or millions of emails that we see from our clients. They see that X amount of times, right? So the trends that we can identify, I think it's our responsibility to share with them, saying, hey, I found this. It was weird that your product did this or that. You should take a look at that. That's kind of our responsibility with them, and for them to share with us, hey, we are seeing an uptick on this. Make sure, change these settings. The other thing that vendors can do, and I think they should do, is review the MSP's configuration and say, you know what, I have released this new feature, whatever, 6 months ago, and it turns out you have it off. Is there any reason? Because this will help you. We've seen whatever, XYZ that is going on your environment and can be prevented with this new feature that you did not enable, right? So I think, as I said, it's a collaboration between vendors and MSPs.
Gotcha. Now, Cody, I'm curious from your perspective, from the vendor side, like what are the things that your most successful partners are doing to be really good at engaging with you as a vendor?
So Mail Protector has made a huge push in the last 2 years, give or take. We have, mailprotector.com/FYI. We have these webinars. We have various resources out there and things like that. And we do announcements in our console now when things are released. I'll say a lot of people just kind of click through those, but we also have a separate website you can subscribe to. We did have a help center article that you could subscribe to, and we would update it with every update we did to Mail Protector. Disseminating that information to our partners can be challenging at times. You can call them, you can email them, but unless you're walking up to their house, knocking on their door, a lot of the times they won't they won't reach out. So as a vendor, more communication is always better, and we love that. I will say, not the majority of the time, but a good portion of the time when we tell a partner about a feature is when they send in a ticket asking, how do I fix this? We're like, well, we deployed a tool 3 months ago to fix that. They're like, well, why didn't I know about this? Well, subscribe here. You can show up to our, weekly webinars. You can we have a bi-weekly Shield webinar where we talk about new features and things like that. So there's a ton of resources out there now. So we listened to CIO Landing was one of them that was like, hey, we need this information when it comes out. We listened, and we're really trying to provide that on the vendor side as well. So.
Well, Morrill, he threw it to you there a little bit. Like, what are your base expectations from a security vendor in terms of responsiveness and transparency?
Oh, that's a word, transparency. That's key. I cannot tell you how many times we've seen go into status.vendor.com and that is not updated. There is an outage, you are affected, you have a lot of clients affected, and there's no transparency from the vendor on what's going on when that's going to be fixed. And so that's key. And I can tell you an experience with Mail Protector. They had an issue, I think it was this year, with some Microsoft IPs. Microsoft was blaming a spam house and so on. And they were transparent about that. They shared that with partners. I had the opportunity to talk not only with Cody, but with some other folks at Mail Protector. And they were providing updates until, Microsoft fixed that. And that, it's important because we are the ones who put the face with our clients. Our clients do not reach out to Mail Protector. We do. So we need to know what's going on so we can explain to our clients and make any action that, sometimes we need to take actions, even changing providers temporarily or permanently. But transparency is key.
Gotcha. Now, guys, we're our last time before we dive in on listener questions. So throw those questions into Q&A. I'm going to ask you to take out your crystal balls a little bit here and predict the future. Can we look into the future and conjure up from the future our predictions a little bit? I'm going to sort of ask, let's start. I'm going to throw it with you. How much do you think AI-assisted phishing is going to change over the next year?
It's already dramatically changed in the last 6 months. I think it's really interesting that I can even go to, for example, like ChatGPT or almost any of the other vendors, Claude's another big one, and have it convert what I'm saying to French or Spanish or anything else. So the amount of people I could attack has increased. So I think in that aspect, people are going to see more volume. Because filters aren't going to be able to catch bad English and things like that because the English is going to be so good. So that's one that we've seen in the last 6 months. As far as the future goes, ChatGPT can teach me how to build pretty much anything I want. So if people are willing to learn, they can build their own programs that are more complicated than before, that do a better job, that automate things, that automatically spin up new servers every 10 seconds. There's a million things you can do and speed up if you're willing to learn as far as AI goes. And then AI is just automatically doing things now. So ChatGPT can send emails for you. So I'm imagining when people start whitelisting ChatGPT because they want to get emails from vendors or people using ChatGPT to send out emails, and then someone sending out emails from ChatGPT that are phishing or something like that, they can get that at a very high volume. So I think we're going to see. We'll kind of boil this down. So early 2000s, you saw a lot of volume with very low quality. Now you're seeing lower volume with really high precise quality, like spear phishing and things like that. I think you're going to see high volume with high quality is kind of where we're headed because ChatGPT can take down or Claude can take down the amount of time it takes me to make a high quality attack to almost nothing as it gets better and better. So that's my prediction.
Gotcha. Now, Mauro, I'm going to throw to you with a slightly different version of that. Tell me a little bit about what you're thinking is going to be happening over the next, say, 6 to 12 months around deep fakes and those voice-based impersonation attacks. Like, are you having conversations with clients now? Is it on your radar? Like, what do you think is coming in that space?
Oof. That's changing every day. I mean, there is a new version of a new AI tool every day that, it does a deep fake better than yesterday or 2 weeks ago. So that's definitely a threat out there. I'm kind of not concerned, but I understand what Cody said about sending emails, and you are asking about the fake voice and the faces. And actually, when you combine both of that things with the capability that GPT or any AI actually has to use APIs, that's super dangerous. You can analyze a whole company. You can get their, again, faces, voices from their C-suite executives. You can craft a very target email to them, and you can even use APIs to say, they are using SharePoint to create a fake SharePoint, to upload the file, and to deliver that email within seconds. So that's what I see coming in the next year, probably.
I'm starting to see a couple of questions come in. So, Mauro, I'm going to throw you my last one before I start taking them from the audience. Like, Mauro, I'm going to ask, like, how much of new compliance or data sovereignty pressures are you starting to see from clients? Do you feel that is a coming threat, is a current threat, something you don't worry about? How is compliance and data sovereignty pressuring you and your clients?
Compliance has been around for quite some time for different industries. Now, there are some industries that are getting more and more compliance requirements, which makes sense. And I would say that the majority of them are expected. Unfortunately, we're not seeing that the companies that are there are some types of compliance, I would say this, that the controls that they require in terms of data, it's just basic controls. And I'm not seeing that being something that will improve the data security posture. It will improve the data compliance posture for sure, but not the security posture as much as we would like, I would say. But definitely compliance is a driver to, sit with the client and say, you are required to do this. That's why I'm going to do it. So it's more like that.
Gotcha. Well, I know I could keep going with questions, but I want to make sure that I bring in ones from the audience here. So my first one up is from Allie, who asked specifically around what's the most underestimated step when switching email security vendors or adding a new layer of protection. And I suspect you both have a little bit of insight in there. Mauro, I'm going to throw it to you. Like, what was the most underrated step from your perspective in looking at vendors and adding those new layers of protection?
Features. So different vendors have different packages, and what vendor A may include a security that might be inbound protection and outbound protection and email archiving, for instance. And vendor B might not have all those features. And when you are switching to the new provider, you might be missing those features, and the client is still thinking that you are taking care of that if you did not check that in advance. So check the features.
Cody, and I bet your answer is a little different because you're seeing it from the onboarding perspective. Like, what's that big stumbling block that people aren't expecting or always see when they're coming on and being onboarded?
100%. So I think there's feature continuity is really big. I think Mauro is correct on that one. Like someone says, oh, we had address rewriting over here. Do you guys provide address rewriting? Yes, no. So like end users want the same stuff they've always had. And I think that carries over into a lot of different requests that we get where changes is difficult for a lot of people. So like even like quarantine reports and things like that people will get from a different vendor are slightly different from us. And they'll complain that, this thing is 1 degree different. How do you bridge that gap? But as far as like transitioning over from another vendor, I think the biggest one is there are features or things that there are configurations rather that people have set up that MSPs were not aware of. And when they switch to another vendor, all of a sudden those they're laid bare effectively, because you're all of a sudden adjusting settings, you're changing mail flow, you're changing how things are installed, you're changing what can install. We've had people, for example, try to set up like connectors and things like that, and then a program prevented them. Well, they didn't have access to the program, the previous MSP did, and so they can't actually get a connector installed on the Exchange environment because this program's preventing them. And it's like, how do they get access to that? And then all of a sudden their email security is not on anymore. And there's a ton of these little things that creep in from either previous MSPs, previous vendors that were configured, that you pretty much have to dismantle, pull up. So if you don't know how to dismantle the previous one, you run into a bunch of bumps along the way. So.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes some sense. So keep those questions coming, everybody. If you've got them, throw them into the Q&A box, because we will certainly take them, and I'll keep throwing them out there. This one is a little near and dear to my heart. Mike is asking about metrics. So what metrics or reports should MSPs use to prove to their clients that the email security stack is actually working? Or I feel like you've got some stuff in there that you take out to clients to show that the stuff actually works.
Yeah, I would say there's no one size fit all in here. We have all type of clients, and every single person is different, and every single client is different. There are clients who love to see numbers, who love to see reports, who ask for numbers. Every time we talk to them, they say, "Where are my numbers?" And we block X number of spam and X number of phishing and they love to see that. There are other clients that they don't care about that, and they care about productivity, and they care more about false positive, like an email that I was expecting and was not delivered on time, than on how many emails you blocked that were actually malicious. So that depends on the client a lot.
Cody, I'm going to throw you a slightly different version of the question. Sure. What's some of the metrics that you think are most effective that mail provider provides that are actually underutilized? That are some of the ones that people kind of overlook or don't pay enough attention to.
Underutilized metrics. I think the amount of emails and things like that are blocked by allow lists and block lists are very underutilized. We have a report that says how many allow lists addresses somebody has on their system. There's these security reports are what I say are more underutilized, because end users don't want to see underlying security. They want to see in their face, how much spam did you block? How much time did you save me? How much yada, yada. And then what ends up going underutilized are the actual MSP tools. And those are the tools that say, hey, your security is good enough. You are using SPF DKIM and DMARC correctly. Or, hey, Joe's added 6,000 allow rules in the last 2 months. Do you want to maybe check that out? And we have reports that do things like that. And I think it's, in general, would boil down to the actual MSP reports are what end up getting underutilized, because they're being, I don't want to say bothered by their clients all the time, but they're being asked by their clients all the time, well, how are you helping me? And, they could be maybe doing a little bit more with the reports and things like that are provided for the vendors as well.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask one that's a little bit from me as I slide one in here, because as I was prepping for the webinar, one of the things I looked at was the Radar tool and technology. Tell me a little bit about how that fits in to the whole stack and where it should fit into the process.
Definitely. Yeah. So there are a couple ways to use this. One of the ways is, so Radar is an email vulnerability scanning tool. We'll kind of start there. It scans for SPF DMARC. It sees if we can see your location. It sees email response time, things like that. If we're able to get a tracker through to see if we can monitor activity in your mailbox, we're not doing any of that because we're, the good guys, ideally. And so we're telling you if we can. And I think those kinds of tools can be used in a few ways. The one way that I actually would love to use it is, I think MSPs struggle the most with sales and marketing. So it's really actually easy to go to someone who doesn't want to switch to a tool, or maybe who's a prospect of yours and you're like, hey, I can make your security better. And they're like, how? Well, Radar, you just put in their email, they reply to that email, and within 10 seconds, you can have a full report on exactly what score they got. And we base it on this credit score system. So when someone sees they have a 600 credit score or a 500 credit score, they have an immediate visceral reaction of, how do I make that better? So from a sales and marketing perspective, you can use that very effectively. And then from an actual security standpoint, I would periodically check, especially we have MSPs who also work with web developers. and the web developer owns the DNS. So I would even check once a month, run radar through those types of clients and make sure that the web developer hasn't disrupted their security at all. So I think there's a ton of different ways to use radar, and it's a 10-second check. Like I actually did check for a partner 87 domains in less than 10 minutes. And he just had a mailbox ready on each one, and we just went through on a coordinated call and went through. So like it's actually really easy to rip through those as well.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Now, I think Trisha's question, I'm going to throw a moral on that because it feels like it builds on that conversation. Because she's asking, how do you convince a client who says, we already have the spam filtering, why do you need more? We mentioned, the base products do catch spam. Moral, what do you tell them when they say we already have the basics, we don't need anything else? What do you tell them they need more for?
The first question would be, are you getting spam at all? Because 99% of the time, the answer is yes. And when we explain to our clients, there's no perfect product, there's no silver bullet here. You will get spam with any solution out there, but the solutions that we are providing are not only blocking spam, are preventing your company from reputation damage, are preventing your company from ransomware attacks, viruses, everything is included on that solution that the current solution does not help you with. Plus, having all your eggs on the same basket is not the best idea. So that's why we rely on a third party other than your email provider.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. Like, give me a little bit of sense, like the follow-up there. Like, so they're saying, like, hey, one more layer. You've talked about layered security. Are there other components of layers that you want to have conversations with during that process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we cover, like, we have a tool to monitor DMARC and implement DMARC. We have another tool for email gateway security. We have another tool for email API security. We don't name brands to our clients. We sell solutions. So we have an anti-spam solution, an anti-phishing solution, a DMARC policy management solution. And we explain to them the different layers. And we have proven many times to them, several times. I actually have a case from one of our clients where Mail Protector block an email. This is one of the features in Cloudfilter. If the email contains a virus, even if the user clicks release 1 million times, it won't be released. And we had a ticket from a user saying, I cannot release this email. And the reason was that the email contained a virus. And that's one example that you can sit with the client and say, this is exactly why you are paying us.
Gotcha. Well, I think this question I want to throw in and make sure I've just got enough time for Cody. I think this one's going to be a fun one for you because it's definitely related to support tickets. Like Kara's asking, what's the most common email-related incident you've seen lately that could have been prevented with the right setup?
Wow, that is an interesting one. The most common email-related incident you've seen lately.
Nora, you got one off the top of your head?
Probably some DMARC policy not configured properly, and the email incident is, I send these emails and the recipients are not getting it.
Yeah, I do have one actually too. So.
All right, go for it.
So we actually had a partner join us recently, and when they turned on Mail Protector, a bunch of emails started getting denied being sent, and it's because we detected the wrong server was sending them. There was actually a bad actor using their domain. They had spun up a server to mimic their domain and send out. So this one allowed them to send out, and it's because they had a badly configured SPF record. Well, if they had SPF configured correctly, that server wouldn't have been able to get out to thousands of people and, potentially compromise more people as if they were them. So as far as like commonality goes, it's it's funny to just always go back to the basics, but SPF is misconfigured on so many people, and it's not even like a modern thing that's happening. It's just always been happening. And then as far as like a more modern one goes, I think people are trusting images more often. Whether that's QR codes, that can be an image, but it's surprising what people will click on, such as like an image of a flower or something like that. We've actually had to look in the image programming effectively to find where it's going to lead and things like that. And a lot of the core filters, such as Microsoft, Gmail, and all that, don't catch those. So people will just like click on an image of a flower because they're like, hey, buy a bouquet of flowers. So I think image attacks are something that's kind of on the rise if I had to pick one. And that's prevented by pretty most modern email filters will prevent that, but your core systems won't. So.
Gotcha. Well, I think that's an interesting place for us to sort of end. I know I want to throw out for those that are watching live, we're going to throw up a link on screen. If you want to schedule a demo for Mail Protector, you are welcome to do so. There's to check out all the demos is at mailprotector.com/demo. Cody, Mara, this has been a really fascinating, interesting conversation. I really appreciate you both joining me for your insights and experience. It's certainly a interesting conversation to have. So thank you both for joining me.
Yeah, of course.
And to everybody who joined us, thanks for spending the hour with us. I hope you're walking away with a few ideas you can apply right away, whether it's tightening your client defenses or rethinking the way you work with the vendors or planning what's next. For those that are watching the recording, we're going to throw up some URLs in a little bit. They'll be in the show notes down below if you're listening to the recording. If you want to learn more, you can visit mailprotector.com for all of their resources, or you can follow me at the Business of Tech at businessof.tech for continuing conversations like this one. Really, thanks again for joining us. Stay secure out there, and we'll see you next time.